Today we're going to be looking at 7 free horror games. Some of these are recent games from itch.io and some are relics from the internet. There will be links to all of them in the description. Most of these are very short and not really long enough for a full review. First up is a game called Decadence, where you explore the apartment of a married couple. The atmosphere is pretty intense and comes from the foreboding feeling that something's wrong. The game's scares are sometimes unsettling, but often hurt by the execution of the scripted events. For the sound design, there's stock effects that work okay, but the voice acting was a little wooden, and careful listening reveals more seams in the sound design. There's no gore, and the story follows a PT-style loop of the apartment, and things change each time to reflect the state of the house, which in 10 minutes doesn't really build up much at all, and the finale was a little disappointing.
Anita, are you okay?
Not now. I need space to breathe, please. You're suffocating me.
Next up is a game called Contemp, where you go into an abandoned house in the woods. There's again a fair amount of atmosphere thanks to the environment, but the scripted events and jump scares leave little to no impact at all, which causes the game to drag in certain parts. There's some really great sound design, especially from the environmental items. There's no gore as far as I could tell, and no story to speak of. Despite being visually impressive, there's very little in the game. It's also around 10 minutes long. Vanish is a classic free game from 2012 and follows an unknown person who's thrown into a sewer and forced to try and find their way out with something else lurking down there with them. The game's atmosphere is intense and the dark corridors are oppressive. The scares boil down to jump scares and the fear of seeing or running away from the creature, and are, again, very good for what little there actually is. There's really intense music that enhances the mood. There's no gore that I saw, and the story is really told through notes left by previous explorers that slowly turn to scribbles as the game goes on, which is pretty creepy. The game is about 30 minutes long or longer depending on your luck. Rot is a game based on a short story that I've sadly not seen. It's a psychological horror game that seems to follow a traumatic event and contains a lot of unusual imagery. The atmosphere is eerie and quite foreboding. The scares are generated by the weird and unique things that happen, and they're very unsettling and unusual, which descends into a sensory overload. The sound design is pretty fantastic and manages to sound realistic effortlessly. There's some dead bodies but no real gore, and the story is hard to determine based on the fact that I've not seen the story it's based on, but it's something that manages to stand out on its own without really needing to see the original material. It's just more weird and bizarre. The game is around 15 to 20 minutes long. Nocturnal Visit is a game where you explore an abandoned house you saw online. The atmosphere can sort of be eerie, but it's let down by so few things really happening. There's one or two moments where the game tries to do something scary, but only one thing stood out as something different that was actually effective, with the rest of the game's scares being either predictable or ruined by the lack of atmosphere. The sound design has a few problems with the environmental noises not registering until you were extremely close, and there's not really much else happening in it. There's no gore in the game, and the story felt predictable yet again and didn't really do anything interesting. The game is about 10 minutes long. Stairs is another classic internet horror game about exploring an abandoned bunker. The atmosphere is pretty heavy thanks to the story being leaked to the player as they explore the bunker, and there's the constant feeling that you aren't alone. The game's scares are quite subdued but still fairly effective due to the decent atmosphere until the game explodes near the end, and there's some unique mechanics for the time that make the final sequences pretty nerve-wracking. The voice acting can feel a little wooden, but the reverb of the bunker is executed really well. There's the implication of gore in the game and a few blood splatters, and the story is pretty dark, which hangs over the game the whole time. The game is about 20 minutes long, and a full version was released on Steam in 2015. Deppart Prototype is a game where you seemingly awaken in an underground area and the goal is simply to go through it. The atmosphere is phenomenal, with an uneasy fisheye sort of lens that makes everything seem slightly warped and tense as you move through narrow corridors, along with a deep, whispery ambient drone that persists throughout the game. The scares are sometimes small and subtle and sometimes overbearingly loud, with a great deal of pressure put on defeating enemies as they wail and scream disconcertingly at you. The sound design is fantastic, with a lot of care and attention put into the details of the sound effects and environments. There's blood all over your character's hands and things bleed and drop to the floor when shot. There's not really any story and the events probably didn't need any, but it would have been nice. The game is around 15 minutes long, depending on how skillful you are. And that's it for this roundup. I've got a lot of these to get through and hopefully have some more to show you soon. Thanks for watching, and always go check out Bumps in the Middle of the Night. Peace.